Okay, who would like to begin? Who has questions?
Hi, Delson. I have a question.
Hello. Yep.
Hi. I have a question regarding effective observation and effective collectedness, because I don't know if I understand correctly, but effective observation is rooted in the four foundations of mindfulness, right? Like we observe mind, body, feelings, and phenomena all at the same time, like with an open awareness. And in another video, you said that this right mindfulness or this collective observation then leads to effective collectedness. That one thing leads to another. But now my question is, okay, when one thing leads to the other, or like the right effective observation is effective collectedness. So what is the difference? I don't understand the difference, how they are related to each other, you know?
Yeah. So observation is paying attention to where your attention is moving. And when your attention is resting on your object of meditation for quite some time, then your attention becomes collected. So first of all, that's really coming from mindfulness, which is to say that you're aware of how your attention is moving. So if your mind moves from one object to another, if your mind or your mind notices that the attention is going away from its object of meditation and going towards a hindrance, then that is using effective observation. When you use the 6R process to let go of the hindrance and come back with your attention towards the object of meditation, and it rests there, without being scattered, that is effective collectedness. Okay. So it's using the attention in mindfulness to be able to make sure that the mind doesn't wander around. And if it does, you use the 6 R's, which is right effort, and then you allow the mind to rest in it. When the mind rests on the object of meditation, then you are said to be in jhana. Then you are said to be an effective collected.
Okay, so mindfulness is observing the movements of the mind or what the mind does, and when the mind is set, like on the object, then it's collected.
Yes, but it's still open. That's an important distinction.
Yeah.
So in other words, it's not concentrated or it's not one-pointed or focused on its object. It's just resting there. It's observing. It's still observing, just like right mindfulness. But now the object or the observation on the object is staying fluid. It's staying unified. It's staying in one direction. But it's open enough to notice if an insight arises or some other events arise within the mind, or if a hindrance arises and so on, because you want that open awareness to be able to get the insights into the hindrances, to be able to let them go and to be able to see what's going on. So really, these are working in tandem. It's not like only that one leads to the other, but they're working in tandem. Collectedness is dependent upon mindfulness, and collectedness also re-energizes mindfulness.
Okay. Yeah, thanks. And maybe one little additional question. How do I make sure in the practice, because I was wondering in the practice, how do I make sure I am not one-pointed, but I'm doing the right collectedness? Because sometimes I do feel absorbed and I wonder, okay, is it possible that I have no hindrances? You know, like how do I make sure that I am like that I'm collected and not one-pointed? And how do I get out of one-pointedness if I am one-pointed?
If you're one-pointed, you will know it when the mind becomes, there's a certain level of heaviness to the mind. It's very concentrated, very, very focused. And so you can actually start to feel headaches on the physical level. But within the mind, if your mind is one-pointed, there will be nothing. You won't have any awareness of anything. And if you don't have awareness of anything, then you know when you come out of it that the mind was one-pointed. But if your mind is open enough, then it will have the awareness of the object of meditation But it seems to me that if within your mind, you're thinking about whether your mind is collected or not, or whether your mind is in one-pointed concentration or not, then I would say that it's not. Then there is
Not
a hindrance of
one-pointed.
doubt. Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Because there won't be any thoughts there at all. No thoughts, not even. Eventually what happens is the object of meditation becomes like so absorbed with the mind that it becomes unified. It becomes one thing. And so there's even a possibility of losing awareness of the object itself, and the mind just becomes super concentrated.
Mm-hmm. So it's a very extreme form, and I would notice it like afterwards.
You would, yeah, most probably notice it afterward. Yes.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
Welcome. Anyone else?
Hello, Delson.
Hello.
Yeah, hello. I got a question with regards to loving kindness.
Yeah.
But before that, I would like to thank you for your explanation of wise compassion, because it gave me the idea of what is right view for compassion as compared to the normal people thinking what is compassion. And when you talk regarding the simile of the cloth, and then it gave me more understanding that if we have like our mind is dirty, then no matter how it's like the cloth is dirty, so no matter how you stain it, it doesn't give a better color. So in this way, the mind, if it's dirty with all the hindrances, upakilesa, I think, in that side, then you can't really penetrate your right view to understand what is the word by the Buddha. So similarly with this metta, how is metta, quality of the metta from the right view, point of view? If we, like just now, if the compassion, they got wise compassion, how about metta? Can people confuse with the wrong view of metta or right view of metta?
Well, to understand metta, you have to see it in the context of the natural love and kindness you would have towards a child, or the natural love and patience you would have towards a pet or an animal, or anything that kind of brings up this warm feeling, and you immediately just have this very good feeling, and that's the quality of metta. That's the quality of loving kindness. It's a friendly attitude. It's an attitude of, wanting the best for that being, wanting the best for, your child or the pet, and making sure that they're taken care of, and all those other things. So metta is sometimes compared to a mother's love and so on. But generally speaking, metta is just this attitude of unselfish love, right? It's unconditional love. You don't have any conditions to it. You just are kind for the sake of being kind. You're kind because it feels good to you and it feels good to the other person. And if there's any sense of conditions there, if there's any sense of I am there, if there's any sense of selfishness there, then that metta is liable to be infused with that. And that could be considered, let's say, the wrong understanding of metta. Metta is just unselfish love. It's just love because you feel good and you feel good for the other person and you want the other person to feel good.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Any other questions?
Okay, if no one has a question, I would like to ask a question. You said in one of your other videos that every time we 6R, we relax the formations. We relax the formations, and I also know that the formations are actually like the first element of the dependent origination. They're like the first, like in the river, and yeah, like I would like to know what exactly are formations. I mean, they come before contact, right? How can we even perceive formations, and how is it possible to calm them?
Yeah. So formations, first we have to understand that there are three types of formations. There are mental formations, there are verbal formations, and there are physical formations. Mental formations are essentially the formations that allow the mind to feel and perceive. That is where feeling and perception is experienced. Verbal formations allow a mind to think and process and express through speech. Bodily formations are traditionally associated with the breath and the process of breathing, but I would extend that to saying that's also the expression of movement, physical movement, and so on. So formations arise before contact, but they also arise after contact. When you see something, when you're hearing me speak right now, and when you're seeing me on the screen, there is contact between the ear and my voice. And based on that, there is the arising of a ear consciousness. That ear consciousness arose because the formations, mental formations related to feeling and perception, activated that consciousness to become aware and then produce the experience of the feeling of the sound and the perception that this is my voice. Likewise, when you're seeing me. So formations are quite subtle and formations are quite deep. I see them in many ways. One is to say that they are carriers of karma, because formations are influenced by previous actions and previous choices. But at the same time, they also influence our next set of intentions. And so there is always a tendency in the mind to gravitate towards a specific choice or a particular choice because it's used to it. It's habituated towards it because of formations. So when you make effort to let go of, let's say, a mind that is habituated towards or deviating towards the unwholesome, and you make a choice in your mind that I'm going to stop using the 6Rs and letting go of that choice and replace it with a wholesome choice, then what you're doing is weakening the next set of the arising of formations that can create that unwholesome choice. And you're strengthening those formations that can give rise to a wholesome choice. The formations also, as I said, influence intention, and intention feeds back energy back to the formations in the next set of choices. There's an interdependency between intention or inclination and formations. Formations being carriers of karma, they also, in a sense, filter the way the mind perceives reality. That means that formations, if they are rooted in the unwholesome, if they are akusala, as it said in Pali, that is to say, they are rooted in greed, hatred, or delusion, then they activate a kind of consciousness, as we were talking about earlier with upakalesas. And what that means is that the consciousness, the mind, is defiled, and whatever defilement there is will then give rise to an experience at the level of contact. We said that the contact gives rise in the sense of the joining of, let's say, the ear and the sound. It gives rise to a ear consciousness. That ear consciousness was defiled by the upakilesa at the level of consciousness, which was triggered by the formation that was rooted in greed, hatred, or delusion, which means when there's contact and you experience something, there can be a tendency to have a perception of whatever it is that you're seeing or hearing with those defilements. So if a formation or set of formations are rooted in the unwholesome, there can be an inclination to see things from that unwholesome mindset. The formations have, they're also known or translated as preparations or constructions, because they construct your reality. They prepare the way that you perceive reality. until you make the choice to let go of it and then decondition the mind, so to speak, and then let go of those very same unwholesome formations altogether.
Okay. So formations actually prevent us from seeing reality how it is. They
So as long as they have the sense of I in them, meaning there is conceit in them, so long as there is some kind of craving or aversion in them, and so long as there is ignorance, meaning lack of mindfulness of the Four Noble Truths and the three characteristics of existence. So in other words, the liberated mind will still have formations,
okay.
but the formations are pure. They're purified of those fetters. And so formations are a natural process of dependent origination, whether it's an unliberated mind or a liberated mind. The difference is that there is no fetters in the liberated mind, but in both cases, they arise because of contact. The contact then feeds back energy. The formation is giving rise to a certain kind of experience or feeling and perception.
Okay, so there are actually wholesome. So there are actually formations with a wholesome load.
Oh yes, yes.
Okay.
Loving kindness, and
okay.
for example, when you do the loving kindness meditation, what you're doing is you are strengthening formations rooted in loving kindness, in that mental
Okay.
experience of loving kindness, mental feeling and mental perception of loving kindness.
Okay, nice. Because I thought that you actually had to calm completely all the formations to fully awaken. But you said they still exist afterwards even.
They still exist even
Okay.
afterwards, but you see, the process of awakening is such that you have the cessation of perception, feeling, and consciousness, which means that also means the cessation of formations. There comes a point in your practice when you get deep enough, let's say at the 8th jhana of neither perception, non-perception, then you get into what is known as this borderline state of the signless. And what is happening is the conceit, that is the sense of I am, that's happening in the meditation, is withering away. And eventually, when that formation that is rooted in that sense of I am, this is me, this is mine, this is myself, dissolves, goes away, ceases, then you have the cessation, perception, feeling, and consciousness. When you come back online, so to speak, when the mind comes back online, there is a process in which the mind observes using effective observation. That is to say, it happens quite naturally. You don't have to force it. It will just see the links starting from the formations and so on, and formation, consciousness, namarupa, contact, and so on. When it sees that, then there is an experience of awakening. Then there's an experience and an understanding and insight, an awakening of understanding the nature of reality. That is to say that it is impersonal and therefore not worth holding onto. And then the mind lets go of immense suffering from that. But there will still be formations, and until even when you become an arahat, there will still be formations, but those formations are only there. They're like the coding for the software. So they're beneath the software for you to be able to experience what's going on. They allow the mind to function a certain way. They allow the sense organs, the six sense bases, to experience reality in a certain way. But when there's no craving, when there's no conceit in them, when there's no ignorance in them, then the formations are just arising, activating a pure, undefiled consciousness. That's their function. That's their basic function. If you have no formations at all, then you won't have awareness. You won't have feeling or perception. You won't have any activity at all.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
If nobody have question, I have another question.
Go ahead.
Yeah. With regard to just now you're saying metta, and sometimes you can have like a selfish metta. Just now you're saying, if I hear it correctly.
What I'm
And
saying there is, I'll just point out that metta, if it's selfish metta, is not metta. Metta is purely unselfish. So if it has any kind of sense of selfishness in it, then it has left the territory of metta.
So in this case, is there any prerequisite that we can do so that we can actually eliminate or abandon the selfishness of it, so that our metta is more pure?
Right.
As in Karaniya Metta Sutta, there is a few steps. I think. Is there any link or anything? Yeah.
Good question. Actually, in the Karana Metta Sutta, we talk about first the precepts. It's what it's saying is first you purify the mind through the process of keeping and maintaining the precepts, because that starts to elevate and uplift the mind. That starts to cultivate the mind. It starts to reorganize the mind, let's say, through the process of formations, where every time you start to maintain a precept, maintain the precepts, that causes the mind to become more and more clear. There's a certain level of clarity. Then from there, you infuse the mind with loving kindness with your intention. Just now before I was saying that intention influences formations and vice versa. So if the intention is infused with loving kindness, that is to say that you have loving kindness for yourself. That is to say you have loving kindness for this sense of being. You have loving kindness for your spiritual friend, or you have loving kindness just indiscriminately towards all beings. That intention then gives rise to formations that are not rooted in any sense of self, so far as you understand that this is an impersonal process. The thing is, you can intend, you can look at it in that way, you can try to see it in that way, and that might work for a while, but it's a gradual, natural process. The more the mind sees the benefit of the metta, the more the mind becomes purified. The more the mind becomes purified, the clearer the mind is. The clearer the mind is, the easier it is for it to see the impersonal nature of itself. When that happens, then it realizes that even the intention of metta is not me, mine, or myself. The only thing that you have to do in the beginning is to just watch it. If you observe it without any expectation, if you observe it without any sort of inclination or without any sort of an objective in mind, without any sort of goal in mind, then you have let go of the sense of conceit that you want to achieve something. Then it's just natural flowing metta. And then that whole process, as I just said a few seconds ago, arises, and you let go of any conceit related to whether it's the metta, compassion, equanimity, joy, whatever it might be.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
If nobody have a question, I would like to have another question. Yeah,
Sure, go ahead.
With regards to metta also, the feeling of metta. If we are the person who have ill will, how the metta work? Is the metta cleanse the ill will, or we have to remove the ill will first and then we can bring up the metta?
So sometimes what happens is, so I'll give two understandings of this. Number one, the understanding that the loving kindness is an antidote for ill will. So when you think about it from that perspective, from that understanding, an antidote is that which cures what is present in the body, let's say. It's a cure for whatever poison is there in the body. So the ill will is already there in the mind, let's say. But now what you're doing is you're having the intention of loving kindness. So you have made a commitment, you have made an intention to let go, to abandon, to relinquish the ill will. By doing so, you're replacing that void, that space of that ill will with loving kindness. You're doing two things there. Secondly, it can happen that the loving kindness doesn't come up. It's not necessarily that there is aversion there, but there might be something deeply rooted in the mind that is unable to let go of something. And that's where then an alternative prescribed practice is given, which is a forgiveness practice. And forgiveness is really understanding what was misunderstood. through the process of letting go, through the process of forgiveness. So maybe it's an event that happened, maybe it was some kind of trauma, maybe it was a person or a set of persons. Whatever it is, there is a clinging to it. There is a clinging with an I that this happened to me, or there might be guilt that I did this and I feel sorry and I feel bad and so on. So that can create a lot of darkness in the mind. That can create a lot of muddiness in the mind. So then for that, to clear up all of that, there's forgiveness practice that's given, maybe for a few days, maybe even for the duration of the retreat. It depends on the person's commitment to let go, let's say, and their effort to be able to forgive. So that helps. And then that clears away the mud. And then the mind is ready for loving kindness after that. And the mind will know it, and it will intuitively say that I have completely let go. I have forgiven truly. Now I can continue on with the practice of metta. So this is the way to understand it, that number one, if ill will is already present, it's present. But if you make a commitment to go into loving kindness, then you have already made a commitment to abandon ill will. So you're already having the right intention or the right inclination. If you've done that and then continue on with the loving kindness, then you're on the right track.
And can I have a continuous question?
Yeah, go ahead.
So,
Go ahead.
So how does 6R come into play for
Yeah.
this process?
So the metta as an object of meditation, you have the intention to stay with the object of meditation, which means the metta itself is doing two things. Number one, it's clarifying or it's purifying your formations because you are letting go of any ill will, as we just said. But the 6 R's are also a process of letting go any hindrances that arise. We have to see hindrances as the arising of old karma. It's the effect of karma that you produced at a previous time, whether you broke a precept, whether you were unwholesome in mind, body, or speech, whatever it is. That gave rise to certain unwholesome formations, which then give rise in the meditation in the form of hindrances. So it's like a snowball effect. It starts with a small little, snowflake of formations, starts to roll around, and it starts to create more snowballs, and then that becomes larger and larger, and it manifests in the mind as a hindrance. Now that's old karma. That is to say, it's the experience, the feeling and perception of the hindrance. New karma is craving, clinging, being, and then leading to the birth of new karma. How does new karma arise? When you act upon that particular old karma, meaning the feeling, in this case, the hindrance, with aversion or with craving, when you act upon that hindrance by saying, I don't like this, and you have tension and you try to control it and you try to push it away instead of just waiting and looking at it and recognizing it, which is the first step of the 6R process. If you don't do that and you tangle with it and tackle with it and do all kinds of things, then all you're doing is you're adding fuel to that hindrance. Your attention is adding more fuel for that hindrance to arise, and you're now creating more new karma in that process of that hindrance. When you use a 6R process, what you're doing first is when you recognize, you stop the hindrance in its track. You release your awareness of it, release your attention by then coming and relaxing the mind and the body. When you relax, as we said, you tranquilize the formations, meaning that there were formations that arose as a result of that hindrance. And if it was acted upon, they will be strengthened. But if you relax, you're weakening those formations. You're letting go of those formations. You're tranquilizing them. Then you return to your object, which is the whole, well, you smile, which is the anchor. So it uplifts the mind mentally. When that happens, then you use that mind, which is now collected, pure, bright, and radiant, to come back to your object meditation, if it's loving kindness, compassion, whatever it might be. When you return to it, what you're doing is now you have made another commitment to stay with it. But this time, let's say the hindrance arises after 2 minutes or 3 minutes. But this time, the hindrance, that very same hindrance, will not have the same kind of effect because you had the wisdom to be able to see that hindrance as being there and letting it go instead of acting upon it and trying to fight it. Because of that, it weakened in its force. For the second time around, the third time around, the fourth time around, it will be weaker and weaker and weaker until it's no longer present. And so when it's no longer present, then the mind is fully in jhana. So the 6R process is really right effort. It's the right effort of preventing any unwholesome states from arising. So when you look at the hindrance, you see that there's an unwholesome state, but you stop the momentum, the flow of that hindrance. Then you have to abandon, that's the second right effort. You have to abandon that state. You do that by taking your awareness or your attention away and then bringing it to the intention of relaxing the mind and body. When you do the release and relax, you abandon that hindrance, that unwholesome state. Then when you smile, you uplift the mind. And that is the third right effort, which is to generate a wholesome state of mind. So when you uplift the mind, your mind is naturally joyful, naturally tranquil, and so on. And then when you collect the mind around, that is to say, you return to your object of meditation, then you are maintaining that unwholesome state, that wholesome state rather. You're maintaining what you have generated, and that is the fourth right effort. So really, the 6 R's, the way they have been laid out, are easy for one to remember because it's a mnemonic device, but really what they are is right effort, which is the heart of the practice and the heart and center of the Eightfold Path.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Yeah, I've got a question.
Yes.
It's just really relating to the last question there. So is that the process of the meditation, the metta, or the compassion, the joy, the things I've been experiencing and using the right efforts actually then showing through in everyday life?
Dave, can you please repeat the question? I lost you about halfway.
All right, it's this internet this side. It's not too good at
No
times.
worries. No worries.
Yeah, trying to backtrack now. Where was I? Yes. So I've been less reactional in my everyday life. You know, less upset, less angry, less whatever sort of negative feelings. I've been getting less lately. So coming back to the meditation, is that my experiences in meditation and using the right effort then shown through in my everyday life?
Oh, yes, that's a natural process. I mean, the whole point of this meditation is not to take a break from the world and sit, or you know, even if you're doing walking meditation, to take a break from the world and be in this space. But it's a transformative experience. It is a reconditioning of the mind, a reconditioning of your reactions. As you said, you're no longer reactional or reactive, but there is a changing of your intentions. There's a changing of the way you see the world, or you see the same people, and you're maybe more forgiving or more compassionate or more loving and kind and so on. And that's a natural result of the meditation. So the meditation is it's actually just a tool to let go and abandon the unwholesome states and transform the mind so that it's always uplifted. And in fact, actually, you'll see that the Eightfold Path eventually unlocks 2 more factors, which is right insight and right liberation, which means the mind starts to see reality as it is, and it no longer takes it as myself. It no longer takes it personally. It no longer takes it as being permanent, and is very much more easygoing. It's very much more relaxed. So if you're noticing that, then you know the meditation is actually working, and that's a good step in the right direction.
Oh, that's very good. Because it wasn't until I was listening to the last question that I was sitting thinking, well, thinking back, maybe it's the last 6 months or so, there's been an incredible shift in terms of my life outside of meditation and what I do, and nothing's really changed in my life apart from the meditation, and everything seems to be getting easier.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's a wonderful thing. I'm very happy to hear that.
Yeah, that's very good. I thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Already before we attain arahantship, there will be less and less suffering because of this practice. So you will notice more happiness and, like Delson says, more easygoing, less upset about things. So yeah.
Yeah, that's definitely the case, because I was I wouldn't say extremely reactional, but I did have my moments, and I can't really even remember the last time I got really upset or really angry or anything like that now. So that's very good. That's incredible.
That is very good. That's a wonderful thing. Yeah. Yeah. And then you probably start to see that people also notice, and people will start to wonder what is it that you're doing differently. And it's just through your interactions with them, they're also transformed. So maybe before, generally speaking, a person was reactive and acting in a very unwholesome manner, and the people around expected that person to act in an unwholesome manner. Not to say that they're always unwholesome, but if you start, or generally somebody starts to act in a wholesome way, then the person takes notice of that. And what they were expecting was that, this person is going to be unwholesome, and then suddenly they're wholesome. And then it becomes their mode of operation. It becomes their way of behaving. Then people also around that person start to lighten up. They also become more relaxed, and they also share in that experience of being wholesome. And that's also a wonderful thing.
Yes, certainly I have noticed a change in sort of just general relationships with people. It might be subtle on the whole, but there has been a shift. So yeah, that's great. Thanks.
Welcome. Happy to hear that. Any more questions, comments?
If nobody have, then I have another question.
Go ahead, please.
Yeah, just now you were saying that Eightfold Path, the 6R is like the heart. Oh no, not 6R. Sorry, right effort is like the heart of the Eightfold Path, but Eightfold Path is led by the right view, and right view is the precondition for the rest. I mean, the next one and the next one and the next one until the right effort. So how that right view come about first, and how is that inside this meditation? So that's my question.
So right view, right? We talk about right view. What is right view? There's two kinds of right view. We have the mundane right view and the super mundane. The mundane right view is the understanding of being wholesome, that there is consequences to your actions. And so unwholesome actions lead to unwholesome consequences. Wholesome actions lead to wholesome consequences. There's an understanding that we owe a debt of gratitude to our caregivers, to our parents, and so on. That, there is an understanding, well, or at least there is a open-mindedness towards rebirth and karma. And there are some people, who know about this whole process, and there is a respect for that and an acceptance of that. That's the mundane right view. The super mundane right view is related to the Four Noble Truths. That is to say, understanding suffering, and then abandoning the cause of that suffering, experiencing the cessation of that suffering, and cultivating the way leading to the cessation of the suffering, which is the Eightfold Path itself. But how do you get there? You have to make some kind of effort. And that effort is called right effort. So in other words, you have right effort to take you from wrong view to right view, from wrong intention to right intention, from wrong speech and wrong action to right speech and right action, from wrong livelihood to right livelihood, from wrong mindfulness to right mindfulness, and from wrong collectedness to right collectedness. So there's always an effort to go from the wrong to the right, from the unwholesome to the wholesome. Same with view. That is why it's said, or one is saying, that right effort is the heart of the practice. It's what starts the whole process so that you get to the right view, and then you continue it on to get to the right intention. But now we said that there's right effort, and that right speech, right action lead to right livelihood lead to right effort. That's also part of the process. That is to say, but that's also rooted in right intention. So right intention is giving rise to these four factors. It's giving rise to right speech, it's giving rise to right action, and it's giving rise to right livelihood. But more than that, it's also giving rise to right effort, because there's an intention to go from letting go of the unwholesome and to cultivate the wholesome.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Can I ask another question?
Yeah, sure. You have a lot of good questions. Go ahead.
Okay, with regard to the effort, right view, and Eightfold Path. So there is what do you call it? What is called it? Yoniso Manasikara and Yoniso Manasikara. What is that? How to explain that in English? What's in English word?
They call it wise attention,
Yes.
or
yes.
it's also translated as attention rooted in reality. Yeah, Yoniso
yes.
Manasikara. Yeah.
So how is this process linked? I mean, we are now, before this, I'm Putujana, I'm ignorance a lot. So how the link, how is it start that I go towards the right, wise attention.
Wise attention. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, that's my.
Let me explain it from the context of Nama Rupa. Well, Rupa, first and foremost, is the body itself, made up of the four great states of matter and so on, great elements and so on. Nama is made up of contact, feeling, perception, intention, and attention. So there is wrong attention, which leads to the lack of mindfulness. That is to say that there is either an attention on the unwholesome, which continues to drive forward the unwholesome state, or there's a general lack of awareness, a general lack of being mindful of what is going on with feeling and perception. That too is wrong attention, or Yoniso Manasikara. Wise attention, or as one calls it, attention rooted in reality, is that attention that is mindful in the present moment of whatever is arising in the way of feeling and perception. So whatever experience you're having, there is an intention which drives that attention. So if your intention is not rooted in right intention, for example, then there will be a lack of mindfulness. And so that leads to the wrong attention. There is a wrong placing of the awareness. The attention is the direction in which the awareness goes. And if it's towards the unwholesome, then there is going to be that wrong attention. Or if there's a general lack of mindfulness, then the attention will be scattered. That is also wrong attention. But the attention rooted in reality, the Yoniso Manasikara, is the attention that is rooted in the understanding of what is arising based on mindfulness, based on the experience of observing that feeling and observing that perception, observing what the mind is doing and how it is reacting. This is attention rooted in reality, because what it does is helps the mind see it for what it is, the true nature of that situation. That is to say, seeing things as they really are, which in this sense, in all conditioned reality, is impermanent. And what is impermanent leading to dukkha in the end, and therefore not oneself. And it is an impersonal process. So attention rooted in reality is really attention also rooted in the three realities. That is to say, understanding that this experience right now, even right now, as you're hearing my voice, it's impermanent. And so if it's impermanent, it can be liable to create dukkha if one holds on to it, and therefore one does not hold on to it. So wise attention, or attention rooted in reality, allows the mind to perceive if the mind is holding on to something. And if the mind is holding on to something, then one makes the right effort to use the 6R process. But it also allows the mind to see things as they really are without holding on to things as well. In other words, if you see an experience that is old karma, this is just an arising of whatever is happening, and you tend towards the cessation of that experience without holding on to it, without gratifying it, without becoming attached to it, without having any remorse for it to go away, then you have that Yoniso Manasikara, which is leading to cessation of that experience, which is also leading to the wisdom of that experience, which is to say, knowing it to be possessive or possessing the three characteristics of existence.
Thank you.
You're welcome. I'm going to wait a few more seconds to see if there are any more questions.
A simple question, I think.
Go ahead.
Okay, they say bhavana and some say samadhi. How is it related?
Bhavana is development. It's wholesome development. So that development happens through the process of samadhi, but it also happens through the process of sila, maintaining the precepts, and it happens through the process of insight. So bhavana is sometimes traditionally understood as meditation because it cultivates the mind. It's mental development. But mental development just doesn't happen in meditation. It happens on a moment-to-moment basis in whatever it is that you're doing. So every time you tend towards the wholesome, every time you let go when an unwholesome thought arises, you are using bhavana, or you're cultivating the mind. And so bhavana extends lifelong. It is throughout your life until you become an arhat.
Okay, thank you. And if we do reflection or we do contemplating about Dhamma, that means it's bhavana.
Yes, it is an aspect of bhavana. Because contemplation, we have to understand what is contemplation. It's the ability to see something, not for the sake of seeing it and analyzing it to an extent of mental proliferation, but to the extent that it leads to letting go and it leads to insight. Then that's correct. Let's say contemplation. Then that's the correct use of bhavana.
But never within the meditation itself, I would say.
Yes, that's also important. Yes, so never within the meditation itself. The meditation is a completely different exercise, right? It's where you're just observing and letting the mind become collected around something. But if you contemplate in that process, then you're just agitating the mind and you're not actually meditating.
Thank you.
So I think we can stop it here unless anybody else has any other questions. Okay, let's share some merit.
May suffering once be suffering free, and the fear-struck fearless be. May the grieving shed all grief, and may all beings find relief. May all beings share this merit that we have thus acquired for the acquisition of all kinds of happiness. May beings inhabiting space and earth, devas and nagas of mighty power, share this merit of ours. May they long protect the Buddha's dispensation. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu.